Man, most importantly, that's the power of the happy hour. We're back again. Is this what, 2.5, 3 weeks? How long have we been doing this? Anyone know?
3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Yeah, I guess 3 weeks, right?
Wow, hot damn.
I believe so.
It's me, Brian Brushwood, here, Justin Robert Young, and of course, live in studio joining us, special guest, Bryce Neshcom Castillo.
Now, I didn't bring my credit card. Is that okay?
No, well,
can I
luckily,
ride this train still?
You did bring all of your laundry to do, which I suppose is less than coincidental to you appearing on this happy hour.
It is. Look, two birds with one stone.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. No. Look, whatever it takes. I mean, look, you don't see me fussing. As long as we get talent, then I'm a happy man.
Hey, everybody.
So, Justin,
Yes.
I did a thing, and then I got called out from it by Bryce.
Oh, come on. No. I was worried about this last night, too. Okay, now tell them the story.
I mean, it's fine. It's fine. You know what it is the only thing it reveals is that I am overly sensitive. And,
All right.
and
Yeah.
that,
No, I mean, unknown fact. Evergreen tweet.
Right. And that Bryce is unafraid to call me on my bullshit. So every so often, realizing that among the things that I have to bring the world, one of the most important is my current reputation. So occasionally I'll just type in a little Brian Brushwood on the Reddits and see what people say about him. And
Sure.
There was one that the subject was some version of who is a YouTuber that you absolutely positively cannot stand. And
Gotcha.
27,000 upvotes or whatever. And I see somewhere late to the game in the middle of everything is somebody saying, Brian Brushwood. This dude is a piece of shit. He lives to scam free drinks. He calls his wife the invisible wife, which can't be good for her self-esteem. He ends every podcast, by the way, called Night Attack, with telling people to self-immolate. His possibly mentally handicapped co-host on Modern Rogue is abused constantly. It's also, did I mention he owns a cult compound? This dude's a piece of shit. And I was like, well, how do you I mean, he got a lot of the details right, but not the motivations. And so instead, I just replied with like a link to the Derek Sivers, a real person, a lot like you, and then I gave him gold. And then I go, and then so end of story. This is me.
That's the comment. That is the comment. Yeah.
Right. End of story. Then I go into.
Wait, hold on. Can I? Yeah. All right. I almost now am retroactively regretting that you did not just send me the comment so I could read it in the angry email voice. But all right. Now, here we go. We're already moving. No, we're moving on. We're moving on. You've given them gold. And then what happens?
Also, along with the gold, I just wrote a few lines like, "Hey, man, Invisible Wife was a name Bonnie gave to herself, and Jason's an award-winning horror fiction author, and we used Die in a Fire ironically because
Wait, I didn't. Oh, I didn't see you. I didn't see that.
None of that was public. That was all attached to the "Your comment got gold" button.
Okay.
So only he received this, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I was just like I ain't here to start nothing. It seems like what a bummer. So then I go to the Chat Realm subreddit and I ask, am I the asshole for giving this comment gold? And then I was like, it's really weird because it seems like you got all the details right, but missed the method and the message behind it. And then Bryce, with stunning brutality, the one-punch knockout, just says, yeah, if you look at the history of this person, he comments in Modern Rogue all the time. He's one of our biggest evangelists. This was clearly meant as a joke. Yes, you're the asshole. So
You asked the question.
No.
If you asked the question, you knew the answer. You shouldn't have asked the question.
But it was
You should have said, "Check out this cool." Isn't this weird? Not. Am I weird about that?
It was just so funny. It was so funny because I spent
And I
spent 20 minutes twisting. I'm like, okay, what is the kindest thing I could do to acknowledge this person and maybe nudge him back onto our team? And then Bryce is like, you got 7 layers deep and didn't bother to go that 8th layer where it would have been obvious. So I'm the asshole.
I mean, yeah, that's well. I mean, I don't think you're the asshole, right? I mean, I think that guy is going to feel bad because he now knows very clearly that he made you feel bad. But I do think that it is interesting that you read that and you're like, oh, okay, this guy definitely hates me, as opposed to, oh my God, this guy knows every
doing a
little
bad
in-joke
joke.
about
Yeah.
everything. Like,
The problem, as you know, Justin, there are real people in my life who would invest the time, energy, and effort to learn all of those facts from a place of hate and from a place of throwing it in my face, and to make me feel bad. So I guess from the outside, it would be like, well, obviously nobody's going to learn all of this and still think you're a piece of garbage, except for there's a historical record of people who have done exactly that. So
not
so
on
to me,
Reddit. I mean, like in the forums that we're talking, if we're talking about the same examples, like those were in different forums where no words, positive or negative, should be given any heed.
Yes, correct. You're right. However, like, I don't know, there wasn't enough of the gang signs to
I mean, look,
trigger
look,
in
like,
me. This is clearly a joke, you know?
I am with you in that. When we did the bet on the show where I was like, call me a piece of garbage or a piece of shit or something on Twitter for a week if I lost, and then like I lost, and then everybody was calling me a worthless piece of shit or whatever. It only really took about 48 hours for me to forget that was the bit and just wake up to 9 different versions of all of my like best online friends saying like, you're a piece of shit or you're worthless. And I'm just like fuck you. Oh yeah, gotcha. Like, it's opposite day. I keep forgetting
Like,
that it's
yeah.
opposite week.
And I agree that, like, not, kind of a misguided whole thing with the comment. I think that person's, like, I get the idea behind it, but I think that the way it was written and everything about it did not get across, like, he's either being facetious or he's, like, trying to sneakily, promote the guy that he actually likes and all the different projects and stuff.
Because like, if
so
I was
I
a
agree
nobody,
that
it just read as sincere, like, this dude's a piece of garbage.
Right.
Is what it read like the message
that
was.
I think is, even if they are a friend, if this is in a thread of a bunch of other people saying like, hey, who's garbage? We're collecting garbage pieces, throwing your name in there, even if it's like the most epic in-joke of all time, and he was going to bring this back to you and be like, Brian, how funny is it that I put your name into this thing about bad, annoying YouTubers? You would probably still be like, appreciate the effort, but can we please not do that?
Well, and
it's the same thing with, like, it became a joke in my chat that I have the free political newsletter, and around that same time or before that, I had added the $3 level on the Patreon, right? And so people kept calling it, whenever I would call it the free political newsletter, people would be like, oh, it's $3 though. It actually is it's the $3 newsletter.
Yeah, that $3 emote.
Exactly. It's like, all right, well, that's a joke. Also, Twitch is a place where new people find me, and they don't know that this is a joke. And if the only time that I say the free political newsletter is all of the mods say like $3, $3, then at the bare minimum, it's confusion. It's a barrier to entry when this is like it's designed to be the dip your toe into the Justin Robert Young political waters is like, oh, I go out of my way to write. Do you think I want to write a newsletter for free? No, I don't. The last thing I want is for this easy entree for people to get is to be confused by. But it's hard. It's hard to swim against that grain when you're like, okay, no, but we're the funny tricksters. And the audience is like, hey, fun trickster things. And then it's like, no, don't do that though. Not that trick.
And to partially justify,
like sincerity is not uncool. It's cool to just be like, I like this thing. You don't have to make everything like a bit and like.
Well, and I think that's part of why
roast.
I was vulnerable in that moment was because the previous couple of comments, one was like, recommendations for cool YouTube channels. Hey, check out the Mono Rogue, check out Scam Nation, whatever. And then there was one that said, who's a celebrity that you met in real life that was really cool and who is one that was really not. And there was somebody who is a long-term friend of the show, Magic Malachi. He probably was posted on iTrix back in the day. I don't know if you were there, Justin, for any of them, but he came out to a show at the Indian Casino in Oklahoma. And later I did a Skype appearance for him in his class or whatever, and he just said the nicest things for like a whole paragraph, and I was just like, oh my god, I remember all of this, and I was just really feeling like, hey, this is how it works, is you put good energy out into the world and people remember it. It's like that quote from, it was a Barbara Jordan. I found that people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel. And then like after that, I get this one where it's just like, hey man, sincerely, who's human garbage? And then an answer that says, here's a piece of human garbage and here are specific reasons without a touch of irony, not even making a wink to mentioning buying Blackwater or anything, not even a diamond in there or whatever. And so it's like I was riding high on enough of feeling like, hey, I'm doing it. You know, you put out good stuff and you get good stuff back. And then I read that and it's like, well, here's the part where we have to eat some shit. What's some good stuff we do? Number one, you never argue. Like, I sent a link to the Derek Sivers, A Real Person a Lot Like You, which is basically just a little YouTube reminder that it may feel like you're just barking to a computer, but there's a human that reads it on the other end. And then I gave him gold, and on the gold message, I clarified, in one sentence, a few points, and then like that's all I could do. But then to have the turnaround of being like, guys, am I the asshole? Like when I wrote that, I felt like it was because I couldn't possibly be the asshole. Then Bryce made a correct determination that I was an asshole.
Allow me to posit this theory though. You weren't an asshole until you asked for validation. Like if this were just a thing
that I did privately,
that you did privately on Reddit, then that is an interaction between you and a fan. And that's something that like you have to respond, wait for that dude to message you on Reddit, or but instead, you're just happy with your thing.
I made it a stunt the moment I went to our tribe and said, look what I did.
Yes. Yeah. Or like more specifically, was I right to do this?
Yeah.
And so like Martin Luther nailed in a bunch of theses why you shouldn't have paid your way into feeling good.
I think what I meant was when I read that, it never occurred to me that this was one of our own and that I was misinterpreting a message from one of our own. What I meant that when I put it in the Discord was, hello, friends. This is how I handle literally the worst thing I've been told all day is by gilding them and writing a kind message. That's me, Brian Brushwood. Goodbye. But instead,
this is the worst thing I've been told all day, and I have a teenage daughter.
Did you? If this is dissecting
get a response.
If this is dissecting it too much, we can not. But did you consider just not engaging with it?
Well, I was riding high on the 3 previous messages that I read that indicated that, on balance, when people think of the name Brian Brushwood, they think of kind and good things and him going out of his way to make people feel good.
Okay.
And so it was so my emotional bank account was very full in that moment. And then to read, not only was it a neutral thing or who cares about that guy or whatever, but like no, I actively hate him for all of these very specific reasons, all of which are theatrical constraint or conceits. Then it's like, well, I have enough in here that I can. So we've talked about this before. There's a few different ways I respond to comments on YouTube. If it's low effort sass, I tit for tat that and respond with low effort sass. If it's a compliment, I reward it. If it is so insanely outsized emotionally that, but clearly engaged, I do everything I can to Bruce Lee that energy into going the right direction, because that's power, and it's just aimed the wrong direction. And I want to judo all of that in the right direction. So that was.
So in none of those situations, there's nothing too small to ignore or just wave away.
Oh, no. Absolutely, there is the vast majority. We'll say 95% is too small one way or the other. Like, I like that hat, or it's
The classic. I like that hat.
This dude is dumb, or whatever. Like, I mean, it's like that's not even worth responding to one way or the other. But when somebody's fired up and they're fired up in the wrong direction, this is my old Kearney Street performer, instincts. Tells me that if they're fired up in the wrong direction, then all you got to do is point them in the right direction.
Yeah, I will say that there is a fundamental difference once your message starts getting out to strangers. Like, there's a community element of it, and then there is the fact that once it's clear, and when you cross that mental threshold, there's really no going back. It doesn't matter. Looking at numbers doesn't really matter. You just know that it's possible that your voice is just going out to a bunch of different people, that now criticism and praise just sounds fundamentally different forever. Like it's a weird thing to describe, because you can't really know it until you've been on the other side of it. Like, as video games with Bryce, both the newsletter and the stream continues to get bigger and bigger, and you continue to have more of a career as a public figure, Bryce, you're going to find this out. You're going to know, like, more and more that, like, hey, somebody can just say a thing that just wrecks your mood, like, in a moment, and it takes like active effort to try to rebuild your ego in those moments. And that, if anything, that's where, I think, Brian, from your perspective, that's the internal note for you, is like, okay, I understand I was injured. I understand that it's hard for anybody to look at that and understand how it's going to make me feel. But also now there's like, you have to do your own CPR. Like, you have to do the CPR on your ego, because no one's ever going to really know how to do it. There's no other instruction manual that anybody else can follow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So have you thought about that? Have you thought about as your individual brand, and I know some people are allergic to that word, rises to prominence, sort of what your general strategy will be to handle people who don't like it or want to say something unkind or whatever?
I mean, I've been online for a while, there's nothing that attracts, trolls better than streaming Minecraft on the internet. And especially when no one else is watching. So like I have my own, experiences with that stuff. And in general, I try not to give attention to things I wouldn't take in real life. If it's one thing if there's like, hey, have you considered doing this? Here's like a thoughtful thing of like some constructive criticism, and that's one thing. But sometimes when like there's a verbal thing that that manifests differently online, which is like someone you're in a crowded room, remember those, and you overhear someone making a joke about you in another conversation.
Oh, and they don't
like,
know that you're over their shoulder.
Or maybe they
in
know.
that classic trope.
Or more likely that they do know, and they're like, hey, like that time that you
Yeah.
Like now that is like tagging someone on Twitter. That's like
Grabbing some attention.
Right.
Which I did on today's Mono Rogue release. Real quick, to put a pin in where we're at right now, we just got raided by the DTNS crew. Thank you so much, DTNS. Good day,
thank you,
Internet
Tom.
at all. You guys are the fantastic best. We're talking about how to handle whether trolls, whether they're actual or perceived. We don't have to stick on this topic, though. Possible off-ramp. Sorry, go ahead.
So, yeah, if I can. So, like, in real life, right, like, once is fine, you know, a couple of times, whatever. But when you come to know, like, okay, this person kind of just talks shit, not like behind my back or whatever. They just like want to talk shit, and that's their speed. In the ways that I would organically maybe like not be around that person as much, I do the same thing online. Is like, look, we don't have good interactions. I'm gonna give you a mute, and maybe we'll consider it another day. But right now, I just need, because I don't think it's very valuable to put in too much good energy after bad.
So you're totally right. What becomes different is, even if it's disingenuous, you get things like, I got today. I'm going to read you a thing that I got today.
Sure.
Scott Johnson tweets, I feel incredibly lucky to have an awesome sister who also happens to be an awesome psychologist at Thursday. Wendy is the best. So she does Therapy Thursday on TMS.
Mm-hmm.
Dude replies, it was a Wendy appearance after the election that turned me into a daily listener. Renaissance woodworker mentioned the morning stream on Wood Talk Show around the same day, and I tuned in. I only tune out when at Justin R. Young, this was not a vanity search, just at Justin R. Young to make sure I see it, acts like the supporters of the Orange Man are sane. And it's like, all right, so he's tagging like 4 other people. It's like nothing but praise. And then it's just like, and again, I will, considering the preface here, let me also admit my own sins that I initially read that. And I'm like, all right, this dude, for whatever reason, just wants to like throw poop at me while he's handing out presents to a bunch of other people. He might be this might be read in a different way as I read it to you now. Maybe he means it in a different kind of thing. But I definitely read it as like, it was just like I'm chugging along during my day, and now all of a sudden here's just this thing. And whether or not I respond to it, whether or not I chase it, it still is just this like shard of glass under my tire, and maybe I roll right over it, or maybe
and I don't disagree that like you still have to get over it whether or not you engage with that or not. I totally agree with that.
Yeah,
but I have to stem the bleeding, which is like, I see where this is going. If you were a human being and we were in the room, I would say I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Yes.
If that's the way I would walk away from that conversation, then that affects how I would like to handle them in the past. And I don't want to win over people.
Oh man, that's amazing. That is a sentiment that I have heard from many human beings who are not me, and I do not understand. That's the moment where I think the alien impulse, no. Many people are where you are, but there's something broken in me, and I wonder if it's broken. If you feel the same way, Justin, but it's like, to me, there's no number of one-up lives or starfish that I want to collect or save or whatever. Like, it's only when they're too hard and I give up out of frustration that I fail to get one more starfish.
You chase it harder than I do.
Yeah.
I want to feel like I'm smarter and funnier than everybody. And sometimes that means playing along and making sure that they know that, and I want them to be in on it. So I will be inclusive. But I think that's your busking thing, where it's like all you're ever dealing with is like at baseline apathy, at worst anger, that you're like intruding on their day, and now you have to like convert those unconvertibles. Like you have to make them fans and make them give you money. And I think that instinct for you extends into the literal sea of unwinnables that is the internet, right? And the hostility that is the internet.
Well, and it's only recently that we've hit a level where I can point to a body of work, or I realize that my job is less to win them over in the moment, and my job is just to trick them to consume more of the back catalog that we've put together. So it's like, whenever someone's like, Modern Rogue video says, dude with the glasses needs to shut the fuck up. Like now, whereas before, it'd be like, hey man, I'm watching your videos. You seem cool. I'm cool. Let's be friends. But now it's like, all I need to do is trick them into watching more content, and eventually they'll come around or wash out. And so then that's when the default response became, stick around. I grow on you. This sort of low grade, like I'm not disputing. I'm not anything. Just I'm making you a promise. And so if it was a knee jerk response to a person that he thought never would actually read it, now he knows it's been read. I gave him the gift of paying attention to him and made a promise of stick around and I'll grow on you. And to date, after a year of doing this, nobody has said, it's been a year now. I've stuck around and watched all your videos and I still think you're a piece of shit.
Well, I mean, because at the end of the day, in a land of infinite options, if somebody's still around you, even if they're throwing rocks, like you kind of get their bigger stiff. Like, there's no doubt
people will
that,
walk
like,
away.
It's the easiest thing. That's the default. The default is just like, I have content that I love that I just drift away from for a billion different really good reasons. So I know if I haven't watched all of the movies with Mikey, then if you're still here, even if it's to call me names,
you're still here.
You love me.
like I get that the way that I get that the part of what you love about this is hating me, in which case, happy to be there for you, bro.
Well,
I
and
deliver
really, it's
all the flavors from this fountain machine, including the hate flavor. I hope you enjoy it.
And ultimately, it's like, and this is weird. I mean, we've already done a fairly, psychology heavy episode that I'm gonna threaten to take even further into the muck. But it's like, you don't know where people are in life and where they came from.
Right.
That either in their upbringing or where they are now. That like, I always wonder where in the sentence somebody is when they act like explosively or awfully or toxically.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I wonder where, like, in that Joker sense, like by the time that he's actually on the set with Robert De Niro and he's screaming and yelling and just saying all the things that has been boiling up, you wonder how many times he's been beat up, how many times he's been maligned, yada yada yada. And that's not to excuse bad behavior, but that is always kind of my first interaction is almost pity when I see stuff like that.
Like when when we've got community issues, whether it's in the Discord or back in the IRC or whatever, like part of it is like, you want to give people flexibility, you want to be understanding, because the last thing you want to do is like, tell me your personal shit, and then maybe like that's not a time, something that people can do. But at the same time, when there's long-term stuff, you have to say like, we have expectations, but we can't fix you. We could not ask any of our, community mods or whoever to like fix you or make you better, right? Like what we can say is like, here are the expectations. Here's how you're breaking them. This has been happening for this long. You need to either, act right, or, we have to say goodbye, because you just can't, you can't
that
fix
is
people.
that
You
is a
cannot
whole
fix
aspect.
people.
You have spent a lot of times in the mod area, as the sergeant at arms of between us, like in that regard, Justin and I There are some things that Justin and I are boots on the ground, on our Twitter accounts or on our individual shows and feeds or whatever. But we've been largely insulated about in terms of hot goss and drama.
Oh my! Sure. No. Look, I'll put it like this: when it comes to communities, Bryce is a law enforcement officer, and Brian and I are politicians.
Yes.
Now, technically, the mayor is the police commissioner's boss, but they have very different jobs and very different tools in their arsenal. So it's like Bryce's job is to say, all right, look, here's what you've done. I went back into the chat logs and I pulled the things that you were banned for. This is what, sorry, man, rules are rules. We have to stay. There have to be, guidelines here. And if we don't follow them, everything falls apart. Mm-hmm. And Brian and I have to say, I don't know, man. People get banned for a lot of crazy stuff. I'm going to have to trust the mods here.
How often do I assume that it happens a non-zero number of times, but do people... And we haven't, thankfully, our community has been very good lately, so there haven't been too many issues with it. But I have to imagine at some point people have tried to, I don't know, do a runaround and appeal to you guys to say
oh yeah,
that's tough too because I
think there's that same insulation where you tend to keep it,
Well, there have been times where people have done that, and I've responded with, I have no idea what you're talking about. Will you please explain? And me giving even that much energy, unfortunately, communicates, oh, this is the runaround I've been looking for. And so let me tell you everything. Mm-hmm. Let me hit you up the following day with another message asking if you read the other day. Let me tell you the latest of what's happening. Let me tell you. And it's like, I'm like, this is a thing that does not belong to me. And literally even acknowledging that you sent this email or picking up this phone call or responding to this text would be an implicit pouring of gas on whatever this is. So it's like, this isn't mine. It's not of my making. It doesn't belong to me. And the kindest thing I could do for all parties involved is to not. We talked about the nurtured heart approach when it comes to raising kids. I guess we've talked about this in public. Penelope has a bit of the Tourette's, and part of the way that manifests itself is that when she is fired up and in state, there is no rational punishment that merits changing her behavior. Like she can't, like whether it's you're grounded for the night, the day, the week, or you're never going to college, or quite literally tomorrow you'll be hung at dawn.
Punishment doesn't change the mood.
Right. And so absent that, what do? And the very first step of it is you steadfastly pledge as a parent to not give any energy. And it's important to denote energy because energy can be positive or negative, but either one either one will burn. Mm-hmm. So you refuse to give fuel to any behaviors you don't approve of. And man, it was hard for a good 2 years. And yet on the other side of it, last night, it was one of the most amazing, awesome conversations. Penny's 16 now and has strong opinions about things she likes and doesn't like. And one of the things that she likes and deserves to like is Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, sure.
And she said some version of, this live action Avatar, it's just going to suck. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's made by the guy who made the original. So it has a chance to not suck. And she's like, but they all suck. They always fail. Why do they even try or whatever? And I said, sweetheart, this is a very popular sentiment you're giving. However, and this was, I was so proud of her because I got on one of my internet soapboxes, which is hard enough for people listening to me on a podcast that they've decided to listen to. I would imagine much more difficult to a daughter who doesn't remember subscribing to this RSS feed, where I talk about how, yes, what you're really doing is you're insulating yourself against disappointment and shame and embarrassment. Mm-hmm. And you're afraid that this thing that you know is good might be associated with something bad. And I talked about how you should love, your default should be to love what a thing might be. And then the moment it's out, judge it for what it is. And so along the way, like, I'm thrilled about a live action Cowboy Bebop. I'm thrilled about a attempt to do Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm thrilled for every remake. I'm thrilled for, the yet again another attempt to do The Dark Tower on Amazon Prime or whatever. I will judge them for what they are when they're out, but as I pointed out to Penny, like, I've gone through enough TV pitches that I've been afraid to talk about them for fear of jinxing them. And then, of course, almost all of them don't happen. And then I realized, oh, wait, the one very best part of that whole process was the part when I got to
thought about what it might be,
think and talk about what might be about to happen. And so I deprived myself of the very best part of the whole experience. So it was like, very likely Avatar: The Last Airbender live action will be bad. Statistically speaking, it will be bad. And after the fact, you'll realize there was a window when you could have loved what it might have been. But if you're too scared to love it in public for fear of looking like a chump later, that would be a real bummer. And I was blown away. Penny really listened. And I know that was a hard rant for her to listen to. But anyway, I was really proud.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to community stuff, I had somebody call in and ask to get unbanned today on the live stream.
Oh, they called in
because it was an open lines thing, and so he's like, "I have a 2-part question. First part, can I get unbanned?" And the only thing that I will say, and again, there's a difference between a politician and a police officer. But the one thing that I will say, having gone through this enough times, is just, okay, first step, what did you do?
Yeah.
Because the answer back is almost always, oh, I don't even know. I don't even know why I got banned. And the answer back is always, yes, you do.
People know.
They know. And it's like, either you are going to tell me what you did, or you're going to tell me your best guess. And it better sound like something that'll get people banned. Like, it better be something hateful and weird, because the only thing that I care about, if I'm going to go to my mods and risk my relationship with people who are taking the time out of their day to deal with toxic people for no reward other than community, if I'm going to take out that line of credit, I better at least be able to bring a repentant soul before them, who says, yes, I said this.
It's so funny because that's we told that Josie story on Tuesday about her fussing at her mom, and it was my job to go up and deal with the crying Josie, but I didn't have much time. Or she was the angry Josie at that moment. And I said, the way I put it to Josie was like, hey, I don't have long, but pretend that you have the chance, you're on a game show, and you can make $1 million for our family. And all you have to do is, to the very best of your ability, say what you think your mom thinks you did wrong, as if it was her saying it. And then she said she thinks that I made a bad decision and I'm dumb and she hates me. And I'm like, that's all true. That's how your mom feels about you. I'm glad she realized it. And then, but it's like, but then, she
Can
reset.
you believe she picked a chocolate pudding for her lunch snack? What an idiot.
This one. but then like, she got as far as like even trying to, like, you could tell she was at least trying to make that effort to see how her behavior looked from somebody on the outside. And then she started to tear up and she's like, well, it's just that. And I'm like, this is the part you talk to your mom. I got to go. Bye.
Yeah.
Then off I ran.
Can I, if this is too off gear, we can go back. But I just played a new game. I just finished it today or yesterday, called A Fold Together or Fold Apart. It's A Fold Apart. It's on the Apple Arcade and on PC and stuff. And it's really interesting. You play like a couple who are doing this long distance relationship, and so they're working through it, and they're only communicating via text messages. And so you like pick messages, and then at some point they send something. It's like, oh, it would just be so perfect if you were here in the city with me. And the text message grows and it turns red, and it's like, what do you mean it would be perfect if you want me to leave the country where I have friends and family? Like, it builds it's this like puzzle game built upon the difficulties we have of like
the misinterpretation of other people's intended
Right.
communications.
And so as you play the levels, you are hearing that one side say like, what, how do you, think about my feelings, this and that and the other thing. And by the end of the set, it's like they've kind of made peace with it. And they're like, oh, I realized that I'm overreacting, or this is not what you meant, or whatever. It's a very cute game. I don't know. It was very interesting because I don't know that I've seen a game handle that very modern difficulty of communicating, which is like trying to understand tone and meaning.
There is
like that.
Like, I always used to yell. I've yelled at friends in the last year about letter writing or big long email writing when there's like some important thing in their lives, a romantic thing, a work thing, or whatever. My steadfast belief is like, the more important it is, the shorter the communication should be. You would rather, you're going to get through this so much faster and so much better in 80 small emails than one email that tells all of your feelings, because at the end of the day, the best gift you can give yourself in a situation where where emotions are ratcheted up is to read an email in the worst voice you could imagine it in. Literally read it out loud, like in this voice. And then like, I really care about you. I think that you're a great part of, like, if you just read it in the most sarcastic tone ever, because you've got to understand that might be how it's read. Like, that might be like how that is interpreted on the other end, and your feelings of it don't matter. Like, your intention doesn't matter. The internet is where context goes to die.
There was definitely a back and forth on Slack between me and David Rowan, and I, for the life of me, don't even remember what it was about. It was about the release or rollout or an email or how we phrase a thing or a thing or a thing. And it was like we both very much felt passionately about it. And I was in the middle of typing the words, "This is apparently a very hot button issue for me that I feel very passionate about. Can we put a pin in it and talk about it tomorrow?" And before I could hit enter, he said, I received from him, "Seems like we're both very passionate about this. How about we talk about it tomorrow?" And it was like, in that moment, I was like, good team.
Yeah.
Like, for everyone to be there.
That's a sign of a good communication. And that isn't always the case, right? There's these kind of breakdowns happen all the time. In fact, it might be the rule and not the exception. Good communication is very likely the a minority amount of communication that happens on the internet.
That's what today's Modern Rogue episode that just came out is about. We were trying to figure out how to title it. I wanted to go with something incendiary, but ended up keeping it fairly tame. Let's see, Modern Rogue here.
Sure, I believe it was called, let me see here, How to Talk Politics with Your Whole Family, Including the Crazy Ones?
Yeah, and what's funny is the responses that I saw were like, man, I was afraid to even click on this because I was afraid they were going to be partisan or one side or the other. But of course, there's no actual, I think we talk about the purple team or the green team, but we talk about the principle of ideological Turing tests. And we learned the bulk of it is about learning about what a steel man argument is. Have you heard of that before, Justin?
A steel man. I mean, I have not heard of it, but I'm assuming that it is the counterpart to the straw man.
Yeah. So the straw man is the dumbest version of the opposing argument that you could think of. Whereas a steel man is, you begin by stating, hey, before we even begin, if I'm hearing you right, if I'm understanding your position right, if I'm knowing you as you, tell me if I'm crazy, but I think you see the whole thing as, and then you proceed to exactly describe everything so well that by the time you're done, they're like, yes, I'm so glad that you get it. Yes, that's exactly it. Thank you. And then at which point you begin like you never make it an opposing journey between the two of you, like one of you pushing one way, the other one pushing the other way. But instead you say, see, I understand all that, but I don't know how to square that with this fact. And then
All right,
it
fucking,
becomes,
you need to delete this. Delete this video.
oh, it's going to put you out of business?
Fuck yeah. The fuck, man? Like, I have a thing going here. Get the fuck out of here. I got a career. I got a fucking, look, I survived coronavirus. I will never financially recover from this. Delete this shit immediately. I think that's really important. It's, Andrew and I used to talk a lot about theory of mind. That theory of mind is something that isn't taught enough in when we talk about critical thinking, we often talk about dissecting ideas and not about modeling where somebody else has gotten to those ideas from.
Theory of mind is basically your ability to acknowledge that the other person is a sovereign entity with their own thoughts, motives, and individual consciousness.
Yeah, like even all right, the Westboro Baptist Church protesters, right?
Correct.
Abhorrent, like messaging, obviously not something that I would ever want to put my name anywhere near. How did they get there?
Right.
Like, all right, let me try to do my best to model in good faith, like a version that gets a person there that isn't just like, duh, I'm a big fat dope. Hey, look at me. I'm just the dumbest person ever. Give me a sign, Pa.
Must be something in the water. Turns me into crazy.
Like if you can think like, all right, well, here's how I feel about my family. If my family told me this my entire life, what would I think? And that brings you to reading about those people, about the people that have left the Westboro Baptist Church and how they describe their upbringing, how they describe still communicating with members of their family that haven't cut them off. Like, and then you come to a point and you say, oh, okay, this is a sad story. And this is not a story that like is going to be solved by me being angry about it. And that's something where, to be totally honest, it's why I left the kind of organized skeptic and atheist communities, because I felt like at the end of the day, whether or not I agreed or disagreed on points with them, what was fundamentally lacking was humanity. And what was fundamentally lacking was a desire to get beyond, we saw to the end of their argument. And that means we win. And we're going to gather together and celebrate our infinite win. And it's like, okay, I get it. Sure, it's fun to say I know, like nanny, nanny, boo-boo, I know and you don't. But, like, really, you understand that's what's happening at church, too, right? Like, they're nanny, nanny, boo-booing, or at least some of the more toxic ones are nanny, nanny, boo-booing the poor atheists and pornographers that are on the other side. And it's like, I don't want to be a part of that either. Yeah. And that's ultimately what I realized, is that what I want is community. I want to understand. And that doesn't take away fundamentally. This is not a 1-for-1 of taking away my ability to know what I think is right. In fact, it is the more righteous path to proselytize that and so I want to be more like the Mormons and be very, very nice. So hopefully they see my side.
There was something about that 20-year period from, let's say, 1995 to 2015, and I think it not surprisingly coincides with Usenet news groups, the internet, where I think that there was this mad dance and flex where, in general, those communities, especially on the skeptic side, for every one skeptic, there's going to be 17 believers in, whatever, believers or well, I don't know, maybe there are ghosts or whatever. And they never had a party before where they ever got to be the nanny, nanny, boo-boo side. And I think that for that brief 20-year period, nobody could resist taking off their clothes, running around and screaming because they could, and that community had never been able to before. And I think that ran itself out, and now we're seeing a bit more nuanced, discussion driven.
Yeah, and you got to wonder how much of this is permanent and how much of this is just always manifested in some different way. But real quick, all right. If we can talk about ghosts real quick.
Yeah.
Please tell me about ghosts.
Oh, man. You watch What We Do in the Shadows? Yes.
Told you it was good, right?
It's a game. There's plenty of room for them to fuck it up. And but I understand episode 2 is a literal game changer as far as all of the dynamics and what pieces are on the table.
Well,
Wait till you see
both-
episode
I
3.
trust them.
Wait till you see episode 3 then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. No, like the first 2 episodes were amazing because whereas the first season was so much about paranormal characters interacting in the real world, this is more of an exploration, much like the Vampire Council, where it's like, no, let's explore more of the supernatural world and their interactions with the supernatural world. And it's, I mean, those first 3 episodes are like,
Just, mwah.
it's like I can't remember the last time a comedy just came out. It's like classic Arrested Development, like where it was just like, bah, like home run. Every episode is just like introducing new stuff and new characters and fun, like conflicts. It's wow, a historic pace thus far. And we had like the best treat because we only thought that there were 2 episodes out, but the new one aired
It airs on Wednesdays.
is it Wednesday? Oh, I thought it was Thursday, but yeah.
think it's
So we
Wednesday.
watched the first 2, and then all of a sudden we were like, oh man, that was great. I guess we have to wait till next week. And then the Hulu thing was like starting episode 3, and we were like, ah.
Oh, that's the best. So, question, Bonnie, Bonnie keeps saying, I don't know that you should be watching this with your 12-year-old daughter.
What we do in the shadows?
Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, here, watch one with us. And then she'll get 10 minutes in and leave saying, I don't know that you should be watching this with your 12-year-old daughter.
I mean, they got curses on that show.
Yeah, but I mean, the curses aren't the thing so much as like fucking Ghost asking to get jacked off by his corporeal self.
Yeah.
You know?
I would consider that a curse, actually. I do consider that one of the 7 curses.
Yeah, I mean, but you want to know what? No, you need to. If she's into it, then like you are only going to show her the things that a bunch of 13-year-old boys are about to be yelling around her at school for the rest of her, teenage and 20s. You know,
Right.
so that it's fine. Like, and
Yeah.
also it's like I remember. Did you ever watch the HBO stage play of Pee Wee Herman's Playhouse?
You mean the original before there was Pee Wee Herman's
Before-
Playhouse?
yeah.
Back when it was like it was the whole being a kid show was the conceit for what was
Yes.
clearly a very adult show. Yeah.
Yes. So I was a kid and obsessed with Pee Wee Herman, right? And so my mom gets me the HBO thing, thinking that it's just another
Oh shit.
Pee Wee Herman's
Where
Playhouse thing. And
Pee Wee Herman's definitely gawking at the vagina of that
Yes.
chick. Yeah.
But I mean, I was obsessed with it, and even like I remember watching it and just I laughed at all the funny jokes that made it a great kid show. I didn't get the other stuff, and even if I laughed at it because other people were laughing in the live thing, and then eventually I got around, I picked up what they were putting down, and I'm like, oh, that was a funny joke.
Right.
But it's like, I think that this idea of like the corrupting knowledge when it comes to stuff like that is just overblown from the kid's perspective.
Well, and I think also, I certainly hope this is the case in the world where.
But then again, I turned out to be me, so that's probably not like.
But that's just it. Is you and I grew up in a time, and we've talked about this before, where there was no way to self-select age-appropriate content for you. You just had to spin the roulette wheel of the cable dial, and then, and as we've talked about before, maybe you ended up on delightful, The Last Unicorn. Maybe you ended up on A Clockwork Orange, and it
Yeah.
affected you however it's going to affect you. Whereas now it's like, at least there's a map, and kids have to, if they want to wander out into the woods, they have to keep on working to go farther and farther out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is probably certainly a more segmented society when it comes in everything, right? But in terms of age appropriate content, yeah. Like if you want to just stay on Disney Plus, like Disney Plus will never accidentally be Pornhub. Like you're gonna have to go to Pornhub to get that, and at the very least, it will require you hitting enter, or some dickhead
yeah.
friend of you sending you a Bitly.
Like
Sorry,
even
Bryce.
even what was that thing this past week where they went back and edited out a butt crack out of a Disney Plus movie?
Oh, really?
Butt crack is the hot new drugs. Are your kids doing it? Film at 11.
Splash, the movie Splash.
They edited out a butt crack.
They added out a butt crack out of that. Just
Oh,
because.
it's Daryl Hannah's butt crack.
All right, well, then now that's a crime. They fucking ruined Splash. We had one
That's
thing
bullshit.
going for us.
Fucking Daryl Hannah, tweet a picture of your bare ass to fucking spite Disney.
You know what I watched this morning today?
Yeah.
The Midnight Gospel. The what's his name? That podcaster guy in the Pendleton Ward new Netflix animated show.
Oh, hold on.
Terrence? No.
I could say it. He's on Harmontown all the time. Back when that was a thing. Duncan Trussell. Got
Yes,
it.
that's it, Duncan
Nailed
Trussell.
it. No.
Yeah, no, that's it.
Okay.
That show's really. It's good. It's weird. Because
I mean, first of all, like I've heard enough Duncan Trussell. like,
but it's not the content. I mean, the content's very cool, right? It's very good. It's like, but the weird thing about it, so it's this like really trippy animated conversation. It always ends up being this conversation between Clancy or the podcaster and whoever his guest is. So like in the first episode, it's Dr. Drew. He's just talking to
playing
Dr.
himself,
Drew, playing a character in the world. And so there's a real conversation. Like it sounds like a podcast conversation that takes place for about 15 minutes, but it's intercut within the visual world that's happening. So like in that first episode, he's talking to Dr. Drew, the glasses guy. Well, Dr. Drew is actually the president in this world where there's a zombie apocalypse happening. And so Clancy goes into the world and is talking to him and says, hey, you want to be my space cast? And they start talking about, drugs and the opioid crisis and what good drugs and bad drugs.
This is a little bit similar to we were just talking about District 9 and Alive in Joburg and how to create content for fiction, Neil Blomkamp acted like he was doing a documentary, asked people to talk about another ethnicity, and then just recut it to make it sound like they were talking about the aliens that were unwelcome in that area. So it sounds like real conversation that's repurposed.
It's
to
not
fit
repurposed.
into a fiction.
What's interesting is like the main conversation that's happening is like takes place or like is mostly about our Earth. And I'm seeing people mention that some of it's excerpts from his podcast. That makes a lot of sense because there are two things that are always happening in these episodes. There's the visual world around you. So in the first episode, it's like you're in the White House and there's a zombie apocalypse and Clancy and the president are, traversing the world where there's a zombie apocalypse. And then they're having a The other thing is there's a conversation and they're talking about good drugs and bad drugs and trips and stuff like that. But then there are the thing that makes it very weird is that there are audio clips that very briefly like reference the thing that's going on around them. So like, oh, they're about to get into a meat grinder, and they say, oh, we should watch out for that thing, and then they go off into another scene, and then they continue the conversation, and so you have this very focused conversation that has these little ties to the very cool visual story in the world that's going on around them.
So thumbs up.
Two big thumbs up.
And this is on what platform?
It's on Netflix.
And it's called what?
The Midnight Gospel. It's only like 20 minutes each too. Like that's the other thing.
And there's a full season of them?
Yeah, it's 8 episodes.
Oh my God, I'm gonna love this. I can already tell. Especially because like I have this empty hole in my heart now that Harmontown's not around. I actually haven't been listening to many podcasts at all.
Really?
Well, because like that was the one. That was the anchor that I was always giddy every time it got uploaded, and kind of absent that, I've actually found myself like listening to NPR, when I drive around. Everyone's sad. What's your emotions about the apocalypse?
I've been going back and listening to old podcasts, just like to have something, because about half of my podcast listening is like turning on the radio for a dog. I just want to hear people talking.
Yeah.
But so I'll just turn on an old episode of YKS or Block Party or something, just to hear people talk, and it's not even like an escapism thing. And so it's not like a weird thing of like, they're talking about planes. Don't they know the plane? Don't go on the planes. It's like, it's not that. But Just
Yeah.
I don't know. It's cool.
Man, hey, I guess we'll wrap it up. That's our hour. Also, congratulations. You don't know it, but this was the inaugural flight on business class.
business. It's business class.
Oh, you know that was happy hour on business class. We love you guys.
Video games at 8.